Hello, everyone. We are here again for the Stranger Rings podcast. This time we are taking a dive into 1996 with the Pillman's Got a Gun angle. I am Corey.
I'm Tom.
And Tom, do you have a gun right now?
I absolutely do not have a gun.
You got to protect this house if you got a broken ankle.
I'll just use the crutch.
Yeah, just beat him with the crutch. That's not what Brian Pillman did on this night. There's a lot going on here. This is in the middle of the NWO kind of becoming a huge part of the wrestling community, and WWF is falling behind when this storyline happens.
Yes, it was a spot where they were really in a dogfight in the ratings, where WWF was getting their ass kicked for 83 weeks. And this is pretty early on into the 83 weeks, if my memory serves me correctly. This is November 4th, 1996, Monday Night Raw. We have some very interesting things happening with some excellent performers. Really a genius angle. Like, I'm a huge fan of this. Like, I think this is one of the most well-done angles that we've had on the podcast so far.
Definitely one of the most realistic, not realistic as in we were going to watch a man get murdered on live TV, but realistic as that's a lot of people's reaction. If somebody just decided to break the window to the door in their house, they would probably shoot them.
Yeah, it's definitely, the logic is completely there. It's just the fact, like, this is happening on a wrestling show. But I mean, we're in 2020 now, where a man's eyeball was just ripped from his skull during a wrestling event.
Yeah, with one of those like googly eyes that they just have in like the Halloween store. Like, it wasn't even like they could have got somebody from Hollywood to come in and at least like CGI that or something. Like,
oh man, I'll tell you what. I know I might get a little bit of heat for this, but I absolutely love the eye for an eye match with Ray and Seth Rollins.
I haven't watched it. I just saw the picture of the little eye.
The eye, yeah. It's too bad they didn't leave it like on the mat, like where you could zoom in and see the eye.
Yeah,
fucking awesome.
Well, somebody shared a picture of Seth Rollins with the eye patch, and I thought like he looked like oh god, what's that what's the video game, Metal Gear Solid or something with Snake, or a movie or whatever it was. Like, he actually looked like he could pull it off. Like, he would have been a great heel with that.
Yeah, I was shocked that he actually won the match, because that's definitely, but it's a very heel thing to do, to rip somebody's eye out.
I guess it works out for Ray because it's so easy that they could just put that thing over his mask,
right.
The eye shield looking thing.
Very true, very true. And because they already did it before, and now they also gave him the out where if they said that there's some sort of horrible injury, but if the optic nerve isn't severed and all the blood vessels are okay, then he could regain his sight, so they could bring him back.
Well, I'm glad that Rey Mysterio is going to be able to see in the future here. Oh my God, I can't believe that that's a sentence. We also had the horror show. This whole Extreme Rules thing seemed like it could have been somewhat of a horror show, depending on the critical reception, with people being dragged into swamps.
Love it.
The Fiend showing up. I just read about it, but it seemed like it was something out of the Twilight Zone.
It was one of the weirdest wrestling events that I've seen in a while. And I absolutely loved it. Like, if you're not going to take wrestling like seriously, to the fact, I mean, if you're somebody who views wrestling as a really serious thing and like you just like the matches or whatever, you're going to hate it. But I tried to view it as the fact, like, okay, this is just a lot of fun. It's ridiculous. I mean, the commentary during the whole eye for an eye match just had me laughing the entire time because they were treating it so seriously. They're like, Seth Rollins at one point yelled, "I'm gonna get that eye, Ray."
I'm gonna get that eye. Oh God.
So
yeah. I mean, you got to take it for what it's worth. There's no crowd there, even though it's, the Performance Center guys are doing it. I never thought the crowd, you love to see crowd reactions, and you love to see, the holy shit moments where people get up and jump to their feet and blow the roof off the place. But I never understood how much I would miss the crowd until this coronavirus pandemic happened and they started doing this pretty much on a soundstage.
Yeah, it really sucks because there's so many moments that have occurred, like even something as small as like Keith Lee winning the NXT title against Adam Cole. Like even though it's on the technically the C show if you're looking at it in WWE's terms, but it's still the fact like this is a huge moment for Keith Lee, and it sucks that he didn't get a chance to get it in front of a live audience that would have just completely lost their shit, like especially at Full Sail.
Oh yeah, yeah. That's one of the only huge moments I think that's happened right now where I can just see that crowd just basking in his glory and having this amazing reaction when he gets that 3 count. And it's really unfortunate that pandemic just keeps going on, and we might never get crowds back this year.
Yeah, it sucks, and everybody's saying like and I hate to go too far into the modern day wrestling talk here, but I think it's applicable for what's going on here. Like with they're hyping up Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton being the match at SummerSlam 2020, and people are saying no, they should wait until a crowd comes back, and I'm like, so you're gonna hold off on probably the biggest match you have for Raw for what the next at least 6 months.
Oh yeah, for sure. Randy Orton has had such a good run since this has happened. It's amazing.
Absolutely. I think he's a performer that has really shined the most during this. And can you imagine if he had a crowd being able to boo him like a real crowd during all this, like the match with Edge, both matches with Edge, him punting Christian, him punting Big Show last night.
I mean, there's been a lot of kind of cool things that have happened here that seem kind of like they've been wasted since there's no crowd, but like Christian coming back, like nobody would have called that.
No, absolutely not. And when I heard like, okay, Christian's wrestling in the main event of Raw, I'm like, excuse me, what the fuck? What year is this?
Yeah, and I love Christian, man. He might be like a top 5 for me, honestly. And I was so happy that he was going to have a match, but then it kind of just turned into a Randy Orton punting. But
Yeah.
I'm happy that he was there.
Oh, same here. But you know who wasn't happy that somebody was there was Brian Pillman on Stone Cold Steve Austin. See, we had to transition somehow.
No, he was fucking heated. Man,
Yeah.
this is the most anger I think I've ever seen in a wrestling promo or angle, honestly.
Yes, and it started on the. I'll give some background because I have the book "Crazy Like a Fox: The Definitive Chronicle of Brian Pillman" 20 years later, which is I haven't finished the book yet, but it's been an excellent read so far. Just getting further insight on the man that is Brian Pillman, but he was originally Pillman and Austin, I believe, were allies going into the first run in '96. Brian Pillman had broke his ankle in a horrible car accident, and they actually thought he might not even be able to walk again. But through sheer force of will, he was able to maintain his wrestling career, which is just absolutely insane. But
yeah, I just want to touch on that real quick because this man, Brian Pillman, could have. I mean, the sky was the limit for this guy if he wouldn't have passed away just almost, I mean, maybe even less than a year after this storyline occurred.
Yeah, and it's sad because the worst thing about it is the fact that Pillman broke his ankle really hampered his in-ring ability because he was one of the premier high flyers in the world before he broke his ankle, and afterwards his work really did suffer, and it's just a damn shame because of how talented he really was.
Yeah, and there's I think some people that have only seen some of his WWF stuff because it is more of a focal point at that time in wrestling, but he started wrestling in the late 80s, I believe, and he was flying Brian. He had an amazing match with Jushin Thunder Liger in WCW. He was the Hollywood Blondes with Steve Austin, with stunning Steve Austin back when he had hair.
Yes,
and
the throwback.
and that happened in WCW, and they were just kind of thrown together, and people ended up loving them, and they were taking their gimmick to new heights. And I think he was a member of the Horsemen too for a little bit, and then he made the move to WWF.
Yes, and in between, he had a nice little run with ECW where he never wrestled a match, but he just cut promos. And I remember I even showed, because I was reading this book and I had never seen the promos before with ECW, and I was watching it in the living room. So if my dad and my stepmom were in there, and even they were drawn in by Brian Pillman's promo ability with the way he could talk and the way he's like, "You smart fucking marks here in the ECW." Like he was like completely uncensored on the WWE network too.
Yeah, he was the loose cannon is what he is known for. He had a lot of success in WCW, but once he became the loose cannon, where he even had the match with Kevin Sullivan, who was the booker of WCW at the time, and he said, "I respect you, Booker man," on camera, and that was a revolutionary moment there. That was one of the first times the fourth wall, besides for when Shockmaster fell through it, was broken down.
We missed a Brian Pillman Shockmaster program.
Just think if the Shockmaster was brought back around this time with no crowd, they'd be like, instead of a tables match, it'd be the through the wall match.
Oh man, the booking opportunities that were missed. You hate to see it.
You do. But Brian Pillman, man, from what I remember on the Bischoff podcast that they had about him, I don't know if you listened to that episode. It's very good though.
Okay, I'll have to check it out.
I think it's one of the earlier ones, but he pretty much said like Bischoff and him were still friends. They talked like weekly probably when he was still in WWF, and pretty much he did not, according to Bischoff, get like catfished into releasing him, but he told him like, I can't justify giving you the money you want. So, go to ECW or something for a year, and then, if you can make yourself a star, I can come back and I can get you the 600,000 or whatever he wanted, because I think he said he was making like 220 at that point.
Yeah.
But he was just like, I can't just, put 150% more salary into you at this time. So according to Bischoff, that's where the loose cannon, he said that was all pretty much his idea for a character, and that he would go to WWF or ECW in order to come back as a bigger star and get the money that he needed in WCW.
And then, but the loose cannon thing that he started in WCW, that was the cool thing. It's what got him all of his money in WWF too. So, and Bischoff, it's tough to tell because Bischoff is not always the most honest. He's gotten a lot better, but like I think about this, I don't know if he would really want to admit it, even if this was the truth. I don't think he want to admit that the fact that he missed out on Brian Pillman.
Yeah, I think it's a mixture of both, probably.
Right, I agree.
So Brian Pillman, though, master, he stayed in character, they said, outside of wrestling. There was something on Bischoff's podcast. He said that Pillman actually wanted to go and get Mark Madden's ticket to the Super Bowl and run on the field as part of his gimmick.
That's amazing.
And get arrested.
Wow. Could you imagine the publicity that would have gotten?
Yeah, honestly. And Mark Madden pretty much shot him down because, he's actually like a radio host and everything. And he was like, if I give you my ticket, I can never cover any of these again.
Yeah.
So
it'd probably be a poor move. Instead, that's the Mark Madden of Tank Abbott beating him up fame on this podcast.
Yes, that's Mark Madden. Yeah, still a Pittsburgh radio host these days, I believe.
Good for him. But with Brian Pillman, one of the things that started this angle was the fact that he had put too much weight on his ankle and it hadn't healed correctly because he was going around the country still doing shows, and he had to have the ankle rebroken so it could heal all over again, and it was in such bad shape that it would have to be repaired. To be repaired, it would have to permanently fuse the ankle into one position, so the movement would be absolutely completely limited compared to before. So they needed to find a way to get him out of it, get him away from pro wrestling for a little while. So you need to do an injury angle. So Bret Hart made his return, and this is the way they found out on the October 21st episode of Raw, where he's returning to WWF. He's going to wrestle Stone Cold at Survivor Series. And there's a bunch of wrestlers, including Austin and Pillman, watching on a monitor backstage. Pillman jumped with glee as Brett declared he was staying, earning him a dirty look from Austin. So, fucking amazing. Then on the following day, they taped Superstars in Cincinnati, which is Brian Pillman's hometown. And Brian Pillman began touting Bret Hart's return in a babyface manner, earning him the scorn of Stone Cold. Austin even acknowledged that once upon a time he and Brian had been a tandem, stating that he once, quote, carried him to a world championship in the Bush Leagues. Oh. Amazing.
Yeah, back in Atlanta, man. But Bret Hart, and he trained with Bret Pillman, pronouns. But yeah. Pillman trained under the Harts, correct?
Yes. He made his debut in, I believe he was playing for the Calgary Stampeders in the CFL. But either that or I forget exactly. But after his football career ended, they got him into Stampede Wrestling, and he was trained by Bruce Hart, and I believe Stu still trained him as well.
Okay, yeah. So it makes sense from a storyline perspective that Pillman would be excited because Bret's, one of his idols. He trained with him. He's known him for a long time, but Stone Cold doesn't like anybody that doesn't, that agrees with somebody that he doesn't like.
Exactly. So it's just perfect heel work by Stone Cold. And I think 96, 97 heel Stone Cold is one of my favorite wrestling characters ever, with just how arrogant he is and how mean and weird he is. Like, it's really good stuff. Like Austin, even though he's such a great babyface too, like, I'm currently watching back, not to get too far away from the plot, but that he in 1997, like Raw, where just after he broke his neck against Owen Hart, or he had the stinger, and the pops that he's getting are ridiculous, and the promos that he's cutting on people, like he just stunned Jim Ross on the pay-per-view, and then he stunned Sergeant Slaughter on the Raw that I was watching, and the reaction that these people gave him and just the way he carried himself, like I truly think that Austin might be the greatest of all time.
Yeah, he definitely had the biggest pops that I think I've ever heard. So I completely agree, especially the one where he came out for the Mankind Rock match.
Oh, that was insane. It was earth-shattering.
Yeah, that's the loudest I think I've ever heard, honestly.
Right.
That, or maybe the only thing that could rival that recently, I believe, is when The Rock came back to host Mania.
That was pretty crazy, too. Like, when you get those surprise returns, it's just fucking insane. And, like, even Austin, when he ran in on The Rock and Triple H at Backlash 2000, that was another one where he had his neck surgery. It was his first appearance since then, and he just beat the shit out of everybody with the chair. He could hardly move, but he got a ridiculous pop.
Oh yeah, the Austin pop is on a different level.
It is. I mean, they should not even call it the Road Warrior pop anymore.
No, it's an Austin pop to me.
Yeah, the best.
And the pops we were going to hear on this night could have been very different. They could have been from Pillman 9mm.
Oh my God.
But to get into the show here, we start the show, the November 4th, 1996 Raw, if anybody's going to watch it back. It's only like an hour long, and if you skip through, you can watch everything in probably 20 minutes, which is very nice.
Absolutely. It's very simple to check out. It took me, like you said, about 20 minutes to go through the whole thing, and that was with taking notes. Yeah,
so we open this Raw here with a unfamiliar face to this point to the podcast, with Kevin Kelly in his Raw button-up at the house of Brian Pillman in Kentucky, right outside of Cincinnati. And there's the only note I had before Kevin Kelly starts talking about how he's going to talk to Pillman is that there's an annoying-ass siren that goes on for like a minute.
The trademark start to Monday Night Raw in the early 90s. You love to see it. Complete pain in the ass, though. You're absolutely right.
I didn't, I don't think I've watched a Raw before 1997, honestly, ever. And I didn't know there was this fucking annoying ass siren that just kept going. I thought Scott Steiner was coming out.
Can you imagine the Loose Cannon Scott Steiner, or the Loose Cannon Brian Pillman, and then Scott Steiner after he lost his mind in 2000, cutting promos together?
Amazing. And Sid.
Sid, yes.
Oh God, that would have been amazing. So Kevin Kelly is at Pillman's home. He is talking about how he's going to interview Pillman, who is laid up with his crutches and his foot in a cast. And Austin threatened to come to Pillman's house the week before this. And because of that threat, and because Austin is a loose cannon in his own right, Pillman has sent his kids to their grandparents and has his friends over as like an entourage or a security force to protect the house.
And that's another awesome way to hype up how dangerous Stone Cold is, where the fact that it's not just like, okay, well, if this dude comes by the house, I don't give a shit. It's no, like, if this guy comes by the house, he's going to harm me and my family, so I need to get as many guys here as possible because I'm defenseless at this point.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy because you can see, like a good like 6 people that are pretty big dudes, and we got to remember if fans knew the backstory of Brian Pillman, man, college football player, played for the Bengals. Probably, we could infer that some of his friends were some big ass, football playing dudes.
Yeah, and they actually got for Les Thatcher, the trainer. I think he was with OVW for a while, or he was with somebody in the WWF system. But they got Les Thatcher's students to come play the role of Brian Pillman's friends. So
Okay.
they got those. They, like you said, it inferred the fact that, like, okay, well, he has football player friends, so let's get some guys that look like football players out here.
Yeah, and just because Brian Pillman is not a big man, he played nose tackle in the NFL at like 6'1" at the most,
Yeah,
250.
225. Yeah, and he was like in college for Miami of Ohio. He was like 220 pounds playing nose tackle and was one of the best in the country.
Amazing, dude. Overachiever in every way in wrestling and in football. But what else is gonna happen here is Austin calls in to Raw via
Yes, he
cell phone.
does. I fucking loved that so much. Like, because that way we didn't have to watch Goldust and the Stalker wrestle.
Yes, Barry Windham was the stalker, which is
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Yes, a Dustin Rhodes Barry Windham match is normally good, but in this situation, I don't know about that one, Chief.
Yeah, definitely it was a weird open. The stalker was randomly with like a bunch of other baby faces. The King helped in the middle of the match and got off commentary. Uh, it was weird. But
Yeah.
While this is happening, Austin calls in because Michael Hayes, aka Doc Hendricks, at this time says Austin wants to talk to Vinnie Mac. So he just pipes him into the fucking speakers and the TV, I guess.
Yes, and Stone Cold's on the phone healing out. He calls himself the biggest star in the world and says, "Who's gonna stop me?" Um, Austin was apparently angry because Pillman was taking up Austin's interview time, and that's why he was driving to his house to beat his ass.
Yeah, so so we are told that Austin is in a rent-a-car. He is driving to Pillman's house. Austin at one point here says Austin 2517 says he'll bring vengeance upon Brian Pillman, and he doesn't care if Pillman has backup.
Yeah, and this is after a few weeks after Brian Pillman was Pillmanized on Monday Night Raw, where Pillman's bad ankle was put inside a chair and Stone Cold stomped on it, therefore breaking it and allowing him to get the surgery. So that's why Pillman is completely defenseless. He's ready to cut this promo on Raw, but he's home. He's not able to defend himself, and this is all because Pillman is a fan of Bret Hart.
Yeah, and Pillman's wife is also seen here that she is also there, so he has to defend her too, even though he can't really defend himself. And this is where King first mentions a gun on commentary. He talks to Austin through the cell phone. He says, I just want to warn you. We've heard that Brian has a gun, and Austin says he doesn't care, and he's going to the home regardless.
Yeah, he said Pillman ain't got the guts to shoot me.
Yeah, it's I mean, good for Stone Cold for not being scared of taking a bullet to the chest. But
it's just like, what was the movie he was in, The Condemned?
You know what? Never seen it, but I know he's like a prisoner, and they're like fighting to the death.
Oh, we're gonna have to cover that.
Yeah, I've never seen that one, but I have seen a couple of WWE movies.
People hate, or like a lot of people hated it. I loved it. They ended the movie with the bold choice of playing Nickelback.
Oh
Very
God,
bold. Yes, very bold.
there's a. I mean, that concept for a movie doesn't sound bad.
No, not at all.
S-
I love the idea. The acting maybe wasn't the greatest, but it's a. I mean, what do you expect?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I mean, you could either watch that movie or the Marine with Ted DiBiase in it.
Very true. Oh
So
my God.
if you're gonna pick a WWE film, you might as well pick something with Austin or Cena in it.
You right.
So we see now that Brian Pillman, we are seeing a camera here inside his home, and he is on his couch with like sweatpants and a sweatshirt, and he has the big leg cast, and he had just had his the ankle surgery again, and he talks about how Austin has crossed the line and it's now personal. Well, I would fucking think so. He's coming to your house.
Yeah, he's coming to finish like the job that he started. He already broke your ankle once. Like it was a little bit of an understatement by Mr. Pillman.
Yeah, and Kevin Kelly, I believe, turns to Pillman. He said, Austin is circling the neighborhood right now. So he was either really close to Pillman's house or he drives very fast because he is circling the neighborhood like a shark trying to find the address of Brian Pillman.
Could you imagine him getting out like in the middle of the night, like trying to find, excuse me, do you know where Brian Pillman lives?
Oh, it would be like like Rockstar Spud when he went into AJ Styles' house and AJ Styles greeted him and said, "Have you ever seen Pulp Fiction?"
Oh man, one of TNA's top 10 moments ever.
That, and we are going to cover some EC3 and Spud stuff at some point here because when they are hunting Willow, that might be the best television I've ever seen.
Oh, it was so ridiculously funny, and I remember us playing that when it happened on our radio show that we had in college.
Oh my
Even
God. The fact that he's like, that Spud said, we should turn back. It's getting late. And EC3 said, Spud, it's noon.
he's still out there in his fucking suit in the middle of the woods, and then Spud has the ghillie suit on.
Oh my God. So great. And I'm glad that TNA is doing some wild shit right now. They just brought people back at Slammiversary, had a bunch of debuts, man. It looks like it's pretty promising. I might have to see if I got access and check them out randomly.
Yeah, they got the Good Brothers now. They got Heath, just Heath, no last name. Eric Young. I'm trying to remember. I think they brought the Motor City Machine Guns.
Motor City
too.
Machine Guns, yeah. Was there anybody? Eric Young, EC3. Yeah, there was like
EC3,
6
yeah.
of them.
Yeah, that's shout out to TNA. It's going to be interesting. They've at least the guys that they've hired are probably going to make it. They've either had history with the company, or they're, in the case of the Good Brothers and Heath, they're there to make a difference.
Yeah, it could be a fun time. So good for TNA or Impact or whatever they're called now. They're always going to be TNA to me. But good for them. They're making some moves.
Very true.
So here Pillman drops the iconic, well, not the iconic line, but this is right before it. He said, Austin, if he comes to this house, is a dead man walking. And when Austin 316 meets Pillman 9mm Glock, he's going to send him straight to hell.
And then Pillman has his gun, and the people in the picture fucking freak out. And I want to give all the credit in the world to Pillman, because his acting ability here was really on. It was on par with with an actual actor, because he was like, his facial expressions were just priceless. Pillman talked about how vulnerable Stone Cold really is too, because Pillman, as Austin's former best friend, knows him better than anybody, and him being asked, "Do you feel like a hostage in your own home?" is what set him off logically to the fact, like, no, I'm not a hostage. In fact, I have a 9mm.
Yeah, I love that he said Pillman 9mm. Like that's a T-shirt right there. Uh, and the fact I mean, he looked crazed. Like he looked like he would fucking shoot somebody. If I walked into a house as a burglar or something, and I saw that man sitting on the couch with that expression, I'm turning the fuck around before I get shot.
Yeah, like fuck that. Even if he doesn't have a gun, I'm still out of here. But yeah, Pillman's got a gun. And at the end of this scene, Kevin Kelly, the father of Kelly Kelly, um,
Oh my god.
so I had to throw it in somewhere. But he said wait a minute, he's out there now. Dun dun dun. And then we cut away.
Yeah, he says he's out there now, but also you get the iconic thing where he says Pillman 9mm, and then he fucking cocks the gun right in front of the camera, like, I will shoot this man right now. Like, I'm not messing with you. And it was fucking ridiculous. An amazing segment right there. 100% on EWR.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so intense with the way that and like the book said, it almost felt like it was being covered like a news story where like they have an active shooter situation or something going on, and it's just really gripping television.
Yeah, and Kevin Kelly, man, nobody thinks about him in this. He's selling this like real hard. He is definitely concerned. You can tell he's like, somebody's gonna get shot here. I had to come here for this fucking company and sit here with this guy, and now he's about to murder someone.
Yeah, like
And
I don't know what I got into.
He is so concerned. Like, and it grows throughout the broadcast. But after this, did you see what they cut to?
Absolutely.
I'm glad that you saw it. They cut to a karate fighter tournament for with some kind of toys, and I guess they're running this like holiday fighting bracket. And for some reason, Sid and Marlena are fighting, and we have King. Who is it? King and Hendrix
Yeah.
breaking down the action.
Oh, absolutely amazing. And it's literally just one of those games where you smash the button a bunch of times. It's like Hungry Hungry Hippos.
Yes, great
But
game.
with karate fighters. Is essentially
Yeah.
what it is. They just fight each other and one of them eventually falls off. It's Rock'em Sock'em Robots, essentially.
Yeah, that's really all it is. And Sid beats Marlena here.
Yes.
So
Sid
good
went
for
over.
Sid.
So, yeah, and that was one of the other big hook was Sid and Shawn Michaels were supposed to have a confrontation, but despite that being the world title program, it was completely overshadowed by Mr. Pillman and Stone Cold.
Yeah, 100%. And just think of at this time, you have Sid and Shawn Michaels just for some reason we're friends at this point to have a title match. Just not a good idea.
Yeah, wild shit. When you have all this going on, you have Austin and Bret. It's an interesting way to build to Austin and Bret Hart. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it's definitely outside the box. Just with this whole angle too, because I don't think anybody has pulled a gun on anyone since in wrestling.
No, probably for good reason too.
Yeah, so we cut back now. Austin is at Pillman's house as we cut to Pillman's friends fighting Austin. And this is kind of comical. There's some stuff in here that doesn't kind of add to the situation as being as serious as we are led to believe.
Right. Yeah, and Austin, he's essentially using whatever he could get his hands on to beat up Pillman's friends. And he tears the shirt off of one of them, really gives him a nice beat down, but the other one nearly gets drowned in Brian Pillman's kiddie pool that he has in the back for his children.
Yeah, it's like a little like turtle or something it looked like.
Yeah.
And he just shoves this man's head in there and starts drowning him. And then the other one, he puts his head in the car door and starts slamming it, which is more realistic, but still kind of looked funny after the kiddie pool incident.
Yeah, and then Austin, it was filmed like a real fight, which was pretty cool. They had just the one cameraman; they weren't having any camera angles, so it looked realistic. But it was also then Austin was picking up like a children's wagon and stuff to beat the shit out of the one guy.
Yeah, there was. I mean, I guess it makes sense that he's, trying to use whatever he can find, but it probably would have been smarter if he would have like brought a pipe, because then he could have broke the window with it or something. But I guess that doesn't really fit Austin's character.
Right. And it's tough. Like It's a tough thing, and I mean, shout out to them for managing to make it still seem heated despite
Mhm.
the comedy part of this segment, like which shows how good a performer that Stone Cold is, and even Pillman as well. But we get. I also wanted to note that Brian Pillman's house is very, very nice.
Yes, it is. It is. It's very nice. Some nice suburbs there outside of the Cincinnati area, I guess. And like, cause the front door, it was like the double doors, that all the nice
Yeah.
fancy houses have, where Austin tries to break in the front door, but he can't get in. So he then goes around to the side, and that's where the camera cuts.
Yes, as Vince McMahon with the line of the century, Austin literally trying to break into Pillman's home.
Yeah, yeah. Vince on commentary was just so weird because there's not a lot from when we were younger where he's actually talking and breaking down a match,
Right.
which was just
Right.
weird to hear. And he has like his announcer voice going, like it's not his "you're fired" voice. Like it's
Yeah.
just this like
Hey
Vince.
everybody, I'm Vince McMahon.
Yeah,
Like
it's this Vince voice that we don't get anymore.
I miss well, I don't miss it because he's I think probably the worst announcer in professional wrestling history. Like as a play-by-play guy, he's fucking horrible. But it's so funny that you gotta love listening to him.
Yeah, it was weird though, man. I don't know because I've always seen Vince McMahon as the evil, boss guy, but
Right.
it's different.
It
The whole
is.
the whole night was very different because poor Kevin Kelly. Now we see him again at Brian Pillman's house. He is being held fucking hostage in this man's living room at this point, and we start seeing Austin breaking the glass to the side door of Pillman's home, which is fucking terrifying if you think about it.
Yeah, it's really like holy shit. The wife, his wife Melanie, starts screaming. Pillman, he's like a complete range of emotions. Like he's going from being really angry to calm, and it's just like it's such a it's exciting. It is really what it is. Like this is one of the most exciting things that I have seen on the podcast so far.
Yeah, you really don't know what's going to happen because they have really built this up that Brian Pillman will shoot this man. Like for 30 minutes in the show, we are led to believe that Brian Pillman does not care and he is going to kill Stone Cold Steve Austin if he comes in his house. And he definitely looks like he is attempting it.
Yeah.
So Austin starts breaking the glass in this door, just like picking away at it, opens the door, and he has to come around a corner here. And as Austin walks in, Pillman has this crazy look on his face, jumps up and is like hobbled, barely able to stand. And the last thing we see before the camera cuts out is Pillman pointing this gun like he's in Lethal Weapon, about to shoot Austin in either the head or the chest.
Jesus. Yeah. And Vince then they cut the transmission, they're static, and Vince McMahon plays it up by saying the producers have contacted the authorities. We'll cut back to it for more news. And like Vince was really treating it like it really happened. Like as the owner of the company, one of his employees, even though it wasn't acknowledged at that point, but the way he acts, it's like he's the owner of this company, and one of his employees is about to shoot the other one on national television. Things have gone too far. This is fucking insane. I don't know what to do.
And I think I'm right in saying this. I heard it a long time ago that people started because I think somebody yells, "Call the police," during this, like,
Yeah.
as part of it. And people started calling the police that lived in that area that were watching because they thought somebody was getting killed at Brian Pillman's
Jesus.
house.
Wow. I could
I,
see that happening.
I want to say that I've heard that, and that was like one of the big things. I could be wrong, but I'm almost 100% sure that I heard somebody say it in a shoot interview or on like a documentary.
Right. And I mean, that's believable because of what happened with Vince McMahon when his limo got blown up. Like, people really believed that it was real, and there were like a couple hundred calls reported to the police of Vince McMahon's limo getting blown up.
Yeah, there was just that was a crazy situation too. I mean, and we're going to cover that at some point on the podcast, but that was some shit as a 12-year-old watching that.
Yeah, that was I. I just remember looking at it and being like, what the fuck? What happened here? Like just being so confused as to why that happened. But and I feel like I probably have a similar reaction to this, just being like, it's they push the bounds of reality.
Yeah.
But the thing that's different about the Pillman and Austin thing is it's treated like everything that's going on is real.
Yeah, and you know what? I just found a What Culture list about this, and I guess this is random, but an F-bomb made the way onto the original broadcast.
Yes, at the end, I was going to get to that.
I didn't know when that happened. I thought it was before, and I'm trying to see if this is where they say that he did have the police called.
Right.
And this was actually filmed live. It wasn't pre-recorded, while the rest of Raw was, according to this list.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so that's pretty crazy if you think about it.
It is, and I did see the fact that it was filmed live, or at least the Pillman stuff was filmed live. I didn't know the rest of Raw was pre-recorded, but I wasn't surprised due to the fact that he did drop the F-bomb, and you could kind of tell when he says it too at the end, but they have it muted where it's not quite as loud, so you could see him mouth the F-bomb but not actually drop it.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a little snippet of this What Culture thing that I'm gonna read, because I guess originally the plan was for Pillman to fire 2 shots at Austin before the feed cut.
Yes, that was another thing I was going to bring up afterwards. That was going to happen, and his wife was going to get Melanie Pillman was going to get knocked down during that.
Okay,
but
so we'll cover that later then.
Yeah.
So I didn't know if that was in the book or not, but that is ridiculous. Just thinking about how much more dramatic that could, if he would have fired a shot and you hear it, the magnitude. I mean, they might have got kicked off the air for good.
Oh, absolutely, because they got in a shit ton of trouble for this, even though it was already Bonnie Hammer, the president of USA Television. She went the only 2 things, we'll just get to it now. The only 2 things that she put the kibosh on was the fact that Melanie would get knocked down and that actual gunshots would be fired on air, because they wanted to fire the 2 shots. And she said, no, that's not happening, and that's not happening. But everything else, that's completely okay. And afterwards, they got so much shit for it because the program was pretty much geared towards kids, like with the Karate Fighter tournament and everything, that they distanced themselves from the show, and they got put on probation for doing it, even though it had already been okayed.
So the whole thing this is insane. I mean, the whole thing. So if Austin would have been hurt right now, they could have wrote him off with a gunshot wound. If they really, I mean, they could have said he got grazed in the shoulder, could have got winged.
But, that would have been amazing. Austin can you imagine his promo of him getting stitched up in the hospital from getting grazed in the shoulder?
And then you bring him back, each, when Pillman's ready and you have the fight of the century. One man broke the other guy's leg, forced him into surgery, and the other shot the other, and then you just have that at WrestleMania, I guess it would happen.
Man.
It's November.
That would be incredible. We could have got that instead of Brett and Austin at Mania, but imagine the timeline change for that. But
yeah, I've often wondered about. We might have to do a random episode, maybe around the holidays when it gets busier, about some what ifs that we can think of. And one of mine is always if Brett stayed and Shawn left.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. I know I would have preferred that. Shots fired at Shawn Michaels, but I just love Bret Hart.
At the end of the day, you lose both of them. If you're Vince anyways, because, Shawn's gone for 4 years.
Yeah.
So it would have worked out better if he would have just picked Brett.
Yeah, well, it's absolutely crazy to talk about. We'll have to talk about that at another time, because that could be an episode in its own.
Yeah, yeah, we'll try to mark that down sometime when we are busier and we can't watch longer angles.
Right.
But this whole thing, the feed does come back up here near the end of the show. And Vince is selling it that, people have been shot or could be potentially dead here. And we come back to Pillman's home, and King and Vince are frantically asking if anyone was shot.
Yeah, and oh my god, absolutely amazing because Pillman's being restrained by his friends, and his friends, by the way, look much less beat up than before. They look like completely normal.
Yeah, they've recovered very quickly.
Yeah, from that, so they are tough. But Pillman's got his crazy eyes going on and is absolutely like looking insane. And Kevin Kelly confirms no one has been shot by any of the explosions because they're not allowed to say gunshots.
I was gonna say, like, what did he grab an RPG instead and just like fire this like it was Call of Duty? Just switch to the secondary. But instead, the explosions, nobody was hit. So are we being led to believe that gunshots did occur?
um, they never clear it up because all Kevin Kelly says is that Austin saw the gun and bolted.
Yeah, he saw the gun and left. So that's not enough to scare Steve Austin off, though. He saw the gun and he just had to mentally prepare himself for 5 minutes before he walks back in the house.
Because
So,
now he's back.
yeah, and Austin shows back up while Pillman's being restrained, and Pillman's friends stop well, like two of them keep restraining Pillman, but the rest turn back and like block this man like a 5-on-1 offensive line out of the room into the hallway.
Yeah, it's like a sumo attack, kind of, where they just try to push him away instead of throwing punches or anything.
So Pillman is screaming as this is happening, as his friends are pulling Austin away. And Pillman says to bring Austin back in here so he could shoot his ass.
Yeah, and then he screams, "Get out of the way, get out of the way," and then "Get out of the fucking way."
I love that. And you know what? You need to drop the F-bomb randomly. And in TV it's happening more now. So if this was happening today, it would probably be fine.
I'm a fan of it. As a person who swears a lot, and especially on this podcast, a lot of F-bombs are dropped haphazardly. But it's realistic, is what
It's
it
just
is.
it's just a word. It's a filler word.
Exactly, and I get not using it on Nickelodeon or anything like that, but
If SpongeBob was just like, let's go catch some fucking jellyfish, Patrick.
See, I get not being able to do that, but like at 10 o'clock at night on FX or like a show like that, what's the harm of doing that with everything else that's already on television? Like on The Walking Dead, who gives a shit if you drop an F-bomb there?
That was the one I was going to bring up as a big Walking Dead fan. I've read the comics. Negan's introduction, he drops like 4 F-bombs. They should have just let him do it. Would have made it so much better. It was good, but they should have let him do it anyways. But and then like the spin-off series, they let them drop like 3 F-bombs a year, but the original series never got to because more people watched it.
Yeah, but they allowed Negan to beat somebody to death with a barbed wire baseball bat, and they showed all of it.
Yeah, with the guy's eye popping out too.
Yeah, but they don't allow. Like, I would absolutely, like, if I was a parent, I would have no problem seeing my kid, like, or watch, if my kid heard an F-bomb get dropped. That's way different than watching them somebody get their brains beat in. Like,
Yeah,
I would have an issue with that, but
even
I wouldn't
before
have
that, Rick. There was a scene in like 2 seasons before that where there's a lot of brutal stuff in The Walking Dead. Obviously, it's a zombie apocalypse show, but they had like a gang try to sexually assault Carl as Rick was like being held down. There was like one guy trying to do that, and Rick couldn't get away because he was restrained, so he bit the guy's jugular out. And you can watch it happen. Like he spits the guy's piece of his neck as it's squirting, and then like guts a man that's trying to rape his son. So, I mean, there's been things that have happened there where the F-bomb just doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal.
Right, but then God forbid if you do drop the F-bomb, you'll get fined. Like American Horror Story was the same way. They finally started letting them use F-bombs after like the gratuitous violence on that show, which I love American Horror Story, but like you had people getting like stabbed in the neck with scissors and like bleeding to death, but you're not allowed to say the F word. Okay.
Or yeah, like I didn't watch the fifth or sixth season, but like of American Horror Story, like the one dude in Freak Show cuts Emma Roberts in half, and that's fine.
Right.
But the F-bomb would have been too far.
It just, oh my God, that's, I don't know, the thing about violence on television versus
Profanity reform in television.
right, or like even on here, like yeah, you're not allowed to drop the F-bomb, but you're allowed to see a man nearly get shot to death.
Yeah, exactly.
And not that I have any issue with some violence on television might be a little bit too far, but like this, I maybe you shouldn't do this if the show's geared towards kids, but if it was a TV-14, then okay, it's understandable. But I don't know. Yeah.
This is completely off topic with this, but it's so random just because, like, I mean, even back in the 60s and stuff, you got, some war shows that obviously didn't show as graphic as they do now, but then you got, Hawaii Five-O and all these cop shows that where you've seen people get shot a million times, but for the wrestling show, it had a different, connotation, I guess, and it wasn't allowed. But you could turn to NBC, which is seen by everybody without cable, or CBS or whatever it's on. Hawaii Five-O's killing 18 people an episode.
Right. And it's just, it's so weird. There's such a double standard. And I think that's one thing that there's some things maybe in pro wrestling that shouldn't be covered. Like for example, Vince Russo's horrible, his like miscarriage storylines, like that's something that should be left out of wrestling for sure. Like there's some things that you just don't put into the pro wrestling medium, but I think if it's like for the Austin Pillman stuff, if it's done tastefully and I guess as tastefully as it can be done, which I believe it was done here. I think that it could work out. It could have a place in wrestling, like Seth Rollins and Ray getting there, like trying to rip each other's eyes out.
Yeah, I don't think that this really crossed the line, but maybe that's because we've watched stuff. There was more violence on TV in our time than
right.
At this point. But I think now if they did this, it wouldn't really even be a problem.
No, I don't know. Now that it's PG, there would be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so let's say it was during the ruthless aggression era. I don't think. I mean, well, they had Cena get stabbed. I mean, they didn't show it, but they said, like, this man is fighting for his life.
Yeah, oh my, I can't, I know we did that episode, but I always try to block out the fact that that storyline happened.
Yeah, and it's so hard to stab someone you can't see.
You're right.
So, but back to this, where the feed returns to, and Kevin Kelly is in the worst situation he could ever be put in his life. I just feel so bad for this man. Kevin Kelly is screaming to call the police after Austin is being restrained again, and Pillman says to let him go so he could shoot him. And King starts frantically screaming for Kelly to grab the gun.
That was the best thing. Like, listen, dude, I know you're pretty new here, but you got to throw your life on the line. You got to stop this shit.
Kevin, grab the gun. Like, what?
I will give credit to Jerry Lawler here. He did an excellent job on this show of really getting over the gravity of the situation.
Yeah, this whole thing just was it really done well? I mean, even though it is kind of a funny and ridiculous storyline, everybody played their role very well, and nobody thinks about Kevin Kelly in this, but I really thought he played it, for not being an actor, very well.
Yeah, I think he reacted the way that a reporter thrown into that type of situation would have reacted.
Exactly.
For a lot of it, yeah. So
if somebody was like, I mean, we've seen hostage situations and car chases, and they act pretty much the same way that that Kevin Kelly would have acted. right
Yeah.
here.
Except there is potential that once the gun was pulled, that Kevin Kelly would have just bolted and left the house. But
I would have been so much more happy if Kevin Kelly would have been the one that said the F word. And he was like, "Fuck this," and just dropped his mic and walked out.
that would have been, oh man, it would have been a realistic reaction. And
If he was
nope,
like,
not
"King,
covering
I
this.
ain't getting fucking shot. Fuck this," and just walked out. But
Oh, Kevin Kelly.
instead, he just stood there and was being told to be the hero.
Yep. As Lawler was screaming, "Kevin, get the gun, get the gun," and Kevin Kelly was obviously not taking the gun from Pillman. Pillman screamed and unsteadily pointed the gun. He looked like a crazy man. His wife is like screaming and crying in the background, and Lawler screams, "Somebody get the gun! Somebody get the gun!" And the show goes off air.
Yeah, what a way to finish a Raw.
Yeah, I've never seen anything like this in pro wrestling.
You go off the air with a man potentially being shot, or it's alluded to that he may come back into this home and actually be capped. But instead we cut off the air and oh God, I just don't know where do you go next week at that point?
The week after that, I believe Pillman was off air.
Well, yeah, I mean, I would guess you can do that, or like, do you bring Stone Cold? Oh God, I don't even know. Like Stone Cold just on the air, like nothing happened. Like he's not gonna be like, I almost got shot last week.
I went and checked, and I'm pretty sure they kind of just ignored it. I watched the Raw after, and I don't even know if Stone Cold was on that Raw following the one that we just watched.
That's honestly probably the best thing they could have done because they were under some heat from USA. But you know, you could always say like both men were sent home for a little bit.
Yeah, and I because Pillman was gone, and the ratings wise, like this did pretty well. Like Nitro still beat Raw 2.9 to 2.3, and Raw's rating was only up from 2.0 to 2.3 from the week before, but Raw's rating like went up from being 2.0 for the first 2 quarter hours, and then when Pillman pulled out the gun, it went up to 2.8. But then because the main event was fake Razor Ramon and Mark Miro, it went down again near the end.
I could see why.
Yeah, so if they would have had like a really good match in between there, that would have been fire. But instead, we got. But it got publicity. I believe TV Guide wrote something about it. As USA Network, you know, they offered an apology for the skit. WWF actually offered an apology for the skit because the USA Network like distanced itself from it. The USA also volunteered an apology, and the Angle got some press in the TV Guide asking if it was really appropriate for children.
And you know what? I don't know what is usually claimed as the first moment for the Attitude Era. I know sometimes people cite Austin 316. I think this has to be it.
Yeah, man. This was fucking mind-blowing.
I mean, Austin 316 is a great promo, obviously a legendary thing, but they didn't start pushing the angles until Pillman and Austin almost shot each other, or you know, Austin was almost shot. That's where you really had to look at Raw and say, "Wow, this is different now. It's not what we saw for the first 3 years."
Right. Well, to a point, just due to the fact that they didn't really, they didn't really change too much of it after this. This was almost like a little bit of an outlier. The real attitude, like I think it took till maybe mid-97 where it started to seep in a little bit, where they had Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart doing his thing with the Hart Foundation, the anti-American thing, and then Shawn doing his DX thing, and then Austin being himself. Like I think it really took till 97 to really switch. But like you said, I think this was the first shot fired, no pun intended, to the whole Attitude Era.
Yeah, this is the most realistic angle that they had
right
till this point, and this is definitely, like the first shot. This is where you finally get something different like this. And I think it's the first one where they saw that brought ratings because of the jump that was reported.
Yeah, but the issue was it was so controversial and stuff that they had to keep the wraps on that for a little while, for a few
Yeah.
months at least, before they did anything. Because then, for a long time, Raw was just a show where it was like it was a tale of two shows, where it was you had the more adult themed stuff, characters and everything, and then you had the stuff for kids and the advertising towards kids.
Hmm.
And they couldn't figure it out until they realized, okay, well, we're just going to go to TV 14 and just completely go for broke here, because the attitude is what's going to draw.
Yeah, they fully committed to it and then never looked back. And until 2010 when they went back to PG, they stayed TV 14 for a decade.
Yeah,
So I mean,
and
they fully committed.
they did, and give them credit for that, because man, it worked out well for them. And I think that for the PG era, it worked out. I mean, people hate the PG era of pro wrestling, but I think that for advertisers and everything, it was probably the best thing that they could do. I mean, they got on Fox because of it,
Hmm.
but it also affects the product as well. So it's a slippery slope there. But the more adult oriented things in pro wrestling tend to get more of the hardcore viewers into it.
Yeah, definitely. There was that switch over, and there were still, and now it's kind of cool when you see those more hardcore kind of things happen, because you're not seeing it all the time.
Right.
But I would like to see more of it, because when you got the pipe bomb, that was like the big not PG thing, and the Nexus was kind of not a PG thing where they destroyed everything and were you know taking no prisoners, and there's a couple other moments like that, where Brock Lesnar said he didn't give a shit about his kids to Heath Slater. You get some things where it becomes more TV 14 and people get real into that mode when that happens, but then it comes back down, which is kind of disappointing. But there's still good things happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that when it comes to the more adult oriented things in pro wrestling, like AEW, at least when it comes to swearing and doing stuff like that, they have a little bit of the advantage. Like on the pay-per-views, they're allowed to drop F-bombs, or at least they do anyway. um so it's interesting to see AEW has a little bit more flexibility, being on TNT and everything. But it's I guess it's really a battle between, okay, well, what's more profitable depending on the era of pro wrestling itself, or what society is like. Like, obviously, in a more cynical society like that, it the I guess Attitude Era style booking and everything was way better. But if that happened today, like it would never work out, at least to the extent that it was at. But there is room for more adult oriented storylines in pro wrestling, I would say.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. Um, it's a thin line that WWE has to walk to, since they're publicly traded. But
Right.
it's, yeah, I don't know. There's just I try to take the good stuff that's happening and just enjoy it and not think too far into it. There's a point, I think, in
Agreed.
any wrestling fans, you know, like us, where you really dive into the backstage of it, and the booking side and stuff, where you do want to see the adult oriented stuff a lot more. And there was a time, mine was probably when I was in high school, where I was like, I'm watching TNA because they actually do some adult kind of stuff, and they're more hardcore, and they can push the
Right.
envelope. But then you just kind of, I think, as you get older, you realize just to take the good from wherever you can find it.
Absolutely. Like, I think that's an important thing that I think all wrestling fans could look at is, there's a lot of things that suck in pro wrestling, but there's so many good things and there's so much fun. If you don't take it too seriously, it could be a lot of fun. And I think that's something that all wrestling fans need to remember as you're watching this, because it's fun. You can still not like things, but just keep in mind, really enjoy the things that you do enjoy.
Yeah, there's a lot of people that just through social media and the internet will get very and even before social media, I used to get on WrestleZone or some of those sites
Yeah.
and be like, "Damn, they're not going to push Dolph Ziggler. I'm pissed. I'm so mad." Or they're not going to push Cody Rhodes, when he was getting over, like when he was doing the smoke and mirrors stuff,
Yeah.
and people would get really mad, and then I just realized me being mad about it, isn't going to change anything. Just support those people, and then hopefully something good happens. That's all you can do.
Right. Right. And it's that I think that's a good thing to really lead this off on is wrestling is so fun, and there's a reason why all of us like it. Just try your best to see the positive in it. I know that I try my best, like even on our social media feed and everything, to really emphasize the positive things that are on there and to stay positive and not really get too far into the booking or anything. And like, you're allowed to have an opinion. You're allowed to say, well, okay, I think this sucks, because there was some stuff like on Extreme Rules and stuff that I thought sucked, but I allowed the positives to, like, the things that I really enjoyed, to focus on that. Like, and like this storyline was, I fucking loved Austin
Yeah.
Pillman.
And we try to just be lighthearted with it even here. We're just we didn't make, we tried other podcasts before that were more serious, but this is the fun way to do it, I think. We're just talking about some stuff that we remember for either being really good, really bad, but either way, we can make fun of it and have fun talking about it. So that's all we really want to do with wrestling at this point.
Right. The only podcast that got me a little bit was the Vince Russo WCW reboot. That was the only one that got me a little bit to the point where I was like, "Oh my god."
There's always outliers.
Yeah, there's an outlier there, but we got some fun stuff coming ahead here on, because I believe this is dropping at the end of July.
Yes, I believe it's either the first couple of days of August or the end of July.
Yeah.
We're trying to map out the rest of the year. For the worst of wrestling, I know that I believe my next pick that will air will be the 2015 Royal Rumble match, which is going to be bad, but it's going to be a longer worst of wrestling than normal.
Yes, but before that, I have the list right here. On August 5th, we will have the worst of wrestling, another one of your picks. A main event of WrestleMania 8, Hulk Hogan versus the legendary Sid Vicious.
Yes, and then I'm looking at the other stuff. August 12th, we are going to be talking about the dark wedding of Undertaker and Stephanie McMahon, with what is going to be possibly our first guest episode. We are pretty confident that it's going to happen. Our friend Jimmy, he's not a pro wrestler or anything, but he's a funny and cool guy. So he's going to get on. He doesn't really watch wrestling, but he said, I want to be on. I sent him all these links, and we're going to get his perspective, which should be fun.
Yes, it's going to be interesting to see somebody that doesn't watch a whole lot of wrestling, to see their opinion on whatever the hell was happening with the dark wedding.
Yeah, it's going to be a different take. So even if you guys are here to listen to us talk, Jimmy will be here with us, hopefully, for that one. And that should be a fresh, different take that most podcasts don't get. And then on August 19th, Tom's pick for the worst of wrestling is Undertaker and Kane, the Brothers of Destruction, against Chronic at Unforgiven 2001.
I'm very excited for that one. I've never watched the match before, but I've heard like really terrible things about it. So, and it's only about 10 minutes, so it's not going to completely kill me.
It might.
Yeah, it might. Who knows? We'll figure it out, because I don't think we'll have a worse one than that Fatal 4-Way, the Four Corners at Sin.
Probably not. No, it's going to be hard to find. And then we haven't decided on August 26th yet, which will be a full episode, not a worst of wrestling. But we will probably, I would think, either have another 90s Raw, potentially, or we will be moving to a different era or company.
Right. One of the things that was suggested to us was the Joker's thing in TNA. and I think I definitely want to do that at some point. But there was one thing that I did want to drop in this episode was I got a picture. I posted a picture on the Twitter of Stone Cold Steve Austin and The Undertaker, with The Undertaker getting ready to embalm Stone Cold alive. He's holding the knife over him, and I wrote, "Feel free to capture this gem." Benjamin Emerson, who on Twitter, who replies to a lot of our tweets, so shout out to him. He's doing a great job out there. He wrote, "On this episode of ER."
Yes, the George Clooney and Noah Wyle cameo could be showing up.
Yes, so absolutely perfect. Thank you again, Benjamin, for replying to the tweet. We'll try to continue to be active on there, on Twitter at StrangerRings1 and on Instagram at StrangerRingsPod.
Yes, for sure. We're going to be posting some stuff. I have actually some pictures I'm going to be posting very shortly, or they may already be posted by the time this comes out, of the highlights or lack thereof of the Sid Justice and Hulk Hogan match.
Oh, absolutely amazing. Wow, it started off hot too.
Spoiler alert, there may or may not be more than one picture of a nerve hold.
Oh God, yeah, considering the 10 minutes of the match was nerve holds.
Oh great. God, if we could have saw Sid and Great Khali go at it, the battle of the vice grip and the nerve hold.
Listen, the Khali vice grip is one of my favorite submission holds of all time, just because they edited Rey Mysterio bleeding from his nose and mouth.
Amazing.
That's it.
I mean, if you think about it, I guess that would be a legit finish if you had a very strong man shove your skull together. But the Great Khali can barely walk, so I don't really think of him as somebody that's gonna crush my head.
Right, but man, wild stuff.
Yeah, so we will be back next week. Is going to be the Sid Justice and Hulk Hogan match from WrestleMania 8. There's some cameos in there by Papa Shango and the Ultimate Warrior, so that's definitely one you want to watch and listen at the same time, because it's a good 20 minutes of your time that will be some comedy there. So
absolutely.
So we will be back next week with that, and then following that, we should have our first guest episode for the Black Wedding with our friend Jimmy, between Steve Austin, I was going to say, between Stephanie McMahon and Undertaker. That would have been a twist, but that should be fun. So stay tuned, keep following the socials, and we will see you then.